I stared at the musty basement cot, trying to maintain my composure as Margaret, my mother-in-law, stood at the top of the stairs with that insufferable smile plastered across her face. "The sheets are clean enough," she said, wrinkling her nose. "Though I suppose you're used to less, being a public school teacher and all." My name is Elena Chen, and for the past 3 years I'd endured Margaret Winston's not-so-subtle digs about my profession, my background, and what she called my unfortunate lack of proper breeding. But this, relegating me to the basement while the rest of the family enjoyed the luxurious guest rooms upstairs, this was a new low. "Mom," my husband Thomas said weakly from behind her, "maybe we could." "Thomas, darling," she cut him off. "We've discussed this. The Carmichaels are coming tomorrow, and you know how particular they are. We can't have them knowing that their potential business partner's son married a—" "Well," she gestured vaguely in my direction. I bit back a laugh. If only she knew. The mansion we were staying in for Thanksgiving weekend, all 12,000 square feet of it, belonged to me, or more specifically, to the private investment firm I built from scratch over the last decade, the teaching job. That was my passion project, something I did because I loved it, not because I needed it. But Margaret didn't know that. Neither did Thomas. When I met Thomas 3 years ago, I was already worth north of $50 million. But I kept that quiet. I'd seen too many relationships destroyed by money, watched too many people change when they realized what I had. So I lived simply, drove a modest car, and let everyone assume the obvious about a 29-year-old high school math teacher. Thomas had been different, or so I thought. He defended me against his family's elitism, insisted that money didn't matter, at least until recently. "The bathroom's down the hall," Margaret continued, pointing to a door that looked like it hadn't been opened since the Reagan administration. "Do try not to wander upstairs during the night. The floors creak something awful, and we wouldn't want to disturb anyone important." I nodded politely, setting my overnight bag on the cot. "Thank you for your hospitality, Margaret." She preened at my submission, probably mistaking it for the desperation of a social climber trying to fit in. Thomas shuffled his feet, looking everywhere but at me. "Well then," Margaret said, already turning to leave. "Thomas, darling, come help me with the seating arrangements for tomorrow. We need to make sure Elena is appropriately placed." As they disappeared upstairs, I pulled out my phone and sent a quick text to my assistant, Maya. "Everything ready for tomorrow?" Her response came immediately, "All set. Transfer papers prepared, staff briefed. Should I warn the current housekeepers they'll be unemployed by breakfast?" I smiled, typing back, "No need." Margaret gave them the day off. Didn't want them disturbing the ambience during her perfect Thanksgiving. I could almost hear Maya's laugh through her reply. "Their loss. Our team is ready to take over at 7 a.m. sharp. Want me to order champagne for the big reveal?" "Better make it the 82 Krug," I wrote. Margaret considers anything else pedestrian. I put my phone away and sat on the cot, wincing at the springs digging into my thighs. Upstairs, I could hear Margaret's voice carrying through the vents, orchestrating her perfect Thanksgiving dinner, completely unaware that she was about to lose her perfect holiday mansion. The property had come up for sale 3 months ago. The Winston family had been renting it for their social gatherings for years, using it to impress potential business partners and maintain their illusion of old money success. But the truth was, they were hemorrhaging cash. Thomas's father's company was on the verge of collapse, and this mansion was far beyond their means. So when my investment firm had the opportunity to buy it, I couldn't resist. I kept my name off the paperwork, using one of my shell companies instead. Let them have one last holiday here, I thought. One last chance to show their true colors. A floorboard creaked above me, followed by Thomas's voice. "Mom, maybe we should at least bring her dinner." "Don't be ridiculous," Margaret snapped. "She can eat in the kitchen with the help tomorrow." "Really, Thomas, I don't know what's gotten into you lately. First that embarrassing teaching job of hers, and now you're suggesting we treat her like an equal." "I just think." "No, you don't think. That's always been your problem. Thank goodness you have me to manage these things. Now, about the Carmichaels. They're our last chance to save the company, and I won't have your little experiment in charitable dating ruin this for us." I listened as their voices faded, feeling a familiar ache in my chest. I'd really thought Thomas was different. Even after learning about his family's financial troubles, I considered helping them. But the past few months had shown me who he really was, a man too weak to stand up to his mother, too concerned with appearances to defend his own wife. Well, tomorrow would change everything. I pulled out my laptop, checking the final details for the morning. The new staff would arrive at 7 a.m. sharp, bearing their uniforms with my company's logo. The property transfer papers would be delivered during breakfast, right when Margaret was usually at her most imperious, and the movers I'd hired would show up at 9 a.m., ready to clear out the Winston family's belongings. Was it petty? Perhaps. But after 3 years of condescension, after watching Thomas slowly transform from the man I loved into a pale imitation of his mother's values, I was done playing nice. A text from Maya lit up my phone. "Car's ready for tomorrow. Driver will be there at 6:30 a.m. to take you to get changed. Sure you don't want to sleep somewhere else tonight?" I looked around the basement at the water stains on the ceiling and the mysterious stains on the carpet. "No," I typed back. "I want to remember every detail of this. It'll make tomorrow that much sweeter." As I settled onto the lumpy cot, I could hear Margaret's voice drifting down again, planning tomorrow's festivities in excruciating detail. She had no idea that her perfect Thanksgiving was about to become anything but. I smiled in the darkness, setting my alarm for 6 a.m. In just a few hours, everyone in this house would learn exactly who Elena Chen really was. The basement was silent except for the gentle hum of my alarm at 6 a.m. I woke instantly, years of early morning meetings having trained my body to snap to attention. Upstairs, the house was still quiet. The Winstons weren't early risers, especially not Margaret, who considered anything before 9 a.m. uncivilized. Perfect. I changed quickly into the clothes I'd carefully hidden at the bottom of my overnight bag, a tailored Channel suit in charcoal gray, Louboutin heels, and my grandmother's jade pendant. The transformation from humble teacher to CEO was subtle but unmistakable. The town car was waiting at the end of the long driveway when I slipped out, Maya standing by the door with a coffee in hand. "You look like hell," she said, handing me the cup. "Was the basement that bad?" "Worse," I replied, sliding into the back seat. "But it'll be worth it. Everyone here?" She nodded, checking her tablet. "Security team's in position. New household staff is waiting for my signal, and the property transfer papers are ready for delivery at 8:30 a.m. sharp." We drove to my office, where I showered and finished preparing for the day ahead. By 7:45 a.m., we were heading back to the mansion. Through the car window, I could see the first signs of activity. Margaret's imported Italian coffee maker would be working overtime by now, and the kitchen would be buzzing with last-minute Thanksgiving preparations. "Ready?" Maya asked as we pulled up to the front door. I touched my grandmother's pendant for luck. "Let's do this." The new security team, wearing uniforms with my company's logo, opened the door for us. Inside, I could hear Margaret's voice rising in confusion and anger from the kitchen. "What do you mean you work for Chen Industries? I didn't hire you. Where are my regular staff?" I rounded the corner just as one of the new housekeepers was calmly explaining that Chen Industries had taken ownership of the property and all previous staff contracts had been terminated. Margaret's face, already flushed with anger, went pale when she saw me. Gone was the meek daughter-in-law in sensible teaching clothes. In her place stood someone she'd never truly seen before. "What is the meaning of this?" she demanded, though her voice quivered slightly. "Good morning, Margaret," I said pleasantly. "Sleep well." "Elena." Thomas appeared in the doorway, staring at me like he'd never seen me before. "What's going on? Why are you dressed like that?" "Like what, Thomas? Like someone who belongs upstairs instead of in the basement?" Margaret's eyes narrowed. "If this is some kind of joke." "Oh, it's not a joke," I assured her, accepting another coffee from one of my staff. "Chen Industries, my company, purchased this property 3 months ago. We've been very patient, letting you finish out your rental agreement. But as of 7 a.m. this morning, we've taken possession." The silence that followed was deafening. Thomas kept looking between me and his mother, his mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. Margaret gripped the kitchen counter, her knuckles white. "That's impossible," she finally managed. "You're a teacher." "I am a teacher," I agreed. "I'm also the CEO of one of the largest private investment firms on the East Coast." "The teaching job?" "That's because I love it. Unlike some people, I don't measure success solely by my bank account." Maya chose that moment to walk in, carrying the property transfer documents. The movers will be here at 9 a.m., she announced, barely concealing her glee. Should I have them start with the basement, or would you prefer they begin with Mrs. Winston's rooms? Margaret's face turned an interesting shade of purple. You can't do this. We have guests coming. The Carmichaels. Ah, yes, the Carmichaels, I interrupted. Your last hope for saving Winston Industries. Funny thing about that, they're actually one of my clients. Have been for years. In fact, they're the ones who told me this property was coming up for sale. Thomas finally found his voice. Elena, why didn't you tell me? I turned to him, feeling the weight of 3 years of silent compliance lift from my shoulders. Tell you what, Thomas, that your wife, the one you let your mother banish to the basement, could have bought and sold your family's company 10 times over? Would it have made a difference? He flinched, and I knew the answer. It wouldn't have changed anything except how they treated me. They would have hidden their true nature better, played nice for the sake of access to my money, just like they were doing with the Carmichaels. The movers will be here soon, I continued, checking my watch. I suggest you start packing. The new owners, meaning me, would like to renovate before the holidays. But where are we supposed to go? Margaret sputtered. What about Thanksgiving? I smiled, remembering all the times she'd made similar dismissive comments about my humble background. I'm sure you'll figure something out. After all, isn't that what you told me last night? About knowing my place? The doorbell rang, right on schedule. Maya went to answer it, returning with a distinguished-looking couple in their 60s. Mr. and Mrs. Carmichael. I greeted them warmly. Thank you for coming early. Margaret's eyes widened in horror as the Carmichaels embraced me like an old friend. Elena dear, Mrs. Carmichael said, we wouldn't miss this for the world. Though I must say, when you told us about your little experiment with teaching, we thought you were mad. Sometimes the best way to understand people is to let them show you who they really are, I replied, watching as Margaret sank into a kitchen chair, her perfect Thanksgiving crumbling around her. The morning was about to get much more interesting. The next hour unfolded like a carefully orchestrated symphony. The movers arrived precisely at 9 a.m., their trucks lining the circular driveway. Margaret watched in horror as they began methodically packing up her precious antiques and family heirlooms, most of which, I knew, were actually rented for these occasions. You can't just throw us out, Thomas protested weakly. This is our holiday home. No, I corrected him, it was your rental property, one that you consistently used to humiliate and degrade others, including your wife. The Carmichaels observed this exchange with barely concealed amusement. They'd known me for years as a shrewd businesswoman, and now they were witnessing firsthand why I asked them to play along with my teacher facade. I must say, Mr. Carmichael commented, accepting a mimosa from one of my staff. This is far more entertaining than another stuffy Winston Thanksgiving. Margaret looked like she swallowed a lemon. James, surely you understand, our business arrangement will not be happening, he finished firmly. We've already signed with Chen Industries. Elena's proposal was, frankly, brilliant, unlike your son's rather desperate attempt to save your failing company. Thomas paled. You knew? About the company? I knew everything, I said quietly. About the debts, the failed ventures, your father's gambling problems. I could have helped, Thomas, if you'd been honest with me, if you treated me as a partner instead of someone to be ashamed of. Then why didn't you? He demanded. Because you needed to show me who you really were. And you did. Every time you stayed silent while your mother insulted me. Every time you chose appearance over substance. Last night in the basement, that was just the final confirmation. Maya appeared at my elbow. The master suite is cleared. Would you like to show the Carmichaels the renovations you're planning? I nodded, but Margaret wasn't finished. This is ridiculous. Thomas, are you going to let her treat your family this way? Thomas looked between his mother and me, and for a moment, I saw a flicker of the man I thought I married. But then it vanished, replaced by the same weak-willed compliance I'd grown to despise. You're right, Mother, he said. Elena, you need to stop this, whatever point you're trying to make. I held up my hand. The only point I'm making is that actions have consequences. You chose your mother's approval over your wife's dignity. Now you can have it permanently. I pulled an envelope from my bag and handed it to him. Divorce papers. My lawyer drew them up last week. Don't worry, I'm not asking for anything. You can keep whatever's left of your family's reputation. The sound of furniture being moved upstairs punctuated the silence that followed. Margaret had sunk into a chair, her perfect makeup streaked with tears. Thomas stared at the envelope like it might bite him. "You could have told me," he whispered. "Would it have changed anything?" I asked. "Would you have stood up to her? Defended me? Or would you have just hidden your contempt better? Played nice to access my money?" His silence was answer enough. Mrs. Carmichael touched my arm gently. "Shall we look at those renovation plans, dear? I have some wonderful ideas for the solarium." As we climbed the stairs, the same stairs Margaret had forbidden me to use last night, I heard Thomas's defeated voice. "Where are we supposed to go?" I paused, looking back at the family that had nearly broken my spirit. "I hear the basement's available." The renovations took 3 months. I kept the mansion's historic charm, but modernized the spaces that needed it. The basement was converted into a state-of-the-art classroom where I now teach weekend mathematics programs for underprivileged students. The same students Margaret would have sneered at now fill these halls with laughter and learning. Thomas signed the divorce papers without contest. Last I heard, he and Margaret had moved in with a distant cousin in Connecticut. Winston Industries filed for bankruptcy shortly after the Carmichaels publicly announced their partnership with Chen Industries. Sometimes, during quiet moments in this house, I think about that night in the basement, about the woman who silently accepted their judgment, who let them believe she was less than she was. She's gone now, replaced by someone who never again has to pretend to be small for others' comfort. Maya says I should have exposed them sooner, but I disagree. Some lessons are worth waiting for. Some revelations need the perfect timing. And some basements make excellent classrooms, once you clear out the cobwebs and let in a light. The pot roast was getting cold, but my mother kept refilling everyone's wine glasses as my brother Mike continued his performance. "I mean, seriously," he said, waving his fork for emphasis. "Who needs a smart device that tracks their pet's emotional state? It's the dumbest thing I've ever heard." My name is Sophie Chen, and at 29, I just sold my pet tech company, Popprint AI, to Google for $4.2 billion. Not that anyone at this family dinner table knew that yet. "It's not just emotional tracking," I said quietly, pushing my peas around my plate. "The AI can predict health issues before they become serious, potentially saving pets' lives." Mike rolled his eyes. "Right, because what the world really needs is more hypochondriac pet owners. Tell me, how many of these magical collars have you actually sold?" I took a sip of water, thinking about the confidentiality agreement sitting in my laptop bag. The acquisition wouldn't be announced until market open tomorrow, but the numbers were staggering: 12 million units sold in the past year alone, with a waiting list twice that long. "Sales are going well," I said simply. "Going well?" Mike snorted. "Is that why you're still driving that beat-up Honda and living in that tiny apartment? Face it, Sophie, you should have stayed in investment banking like me. At least then you'd have something to show for all those genius grades you got in college." My father cleared his throat uncomfortably. "Mike, maybe we should." "No, Dad, someone needs to give her a reality check," Mike interrupted. "She quit a 6-figure job to play with circuit boards in her garage. It's embarrassing." The garage he was referring to was actually a state-of-the-art R&D facility where my team of 50 engineers had revolutionized veterinary care through artificial intelligence. But Mike had never bothered to visit, so he wouldn't know that. "How's the merger going at your bank?" I asked, changing the subject. Mike had been bragging for months about a deal he was leading. His face darkened slightly. "It's proceeding. There are some complications with the numbers, but we'll sort it out." What he didn't know was that I knew exactly why his merger was struggling. My company's AI technology had caught the attention of every major tech giant, and during the acquisition talks, I'd gotten an inside look at various industry dynamics. Mike's bank was trying to merge with a failing institution, hiding bad assets through creative accounting. It would all come crashing down soon. "I'm sure you will," I said, taking another bite of now cold pot roast. 3 years ago, when I first left banking to start Popprint, Mike had been the loudest critic. "Banking is real business," he'd said. "This pet project of yours is just a waste of your education." What he never understood was that my banking experience was exactly what had prepared me to build Popprint. I saw how traditional industries undervalued innovation, how they missed opportunities right in front of them. While Mike was pushing papers and inflating numbers, I was creating something real. The idea for Popprint had come from watching my cat, Luna, get sick. By the time I noticed something was wrong, the cancer had spread too far. If only I'd known earlier, if only there had been some way to detect the changes in her behavior and health before it was too late. That's when it hit me. Pets can't tell us when something's wrong, but their bodies and behaviors give off signals long before visible symptoms appear. If we could capture and analyze that data through AI, we could revolutionize pet healthcare. My mother's voice pulled me back to the present. Sophie, honey, maybe Mike has a point. You're not getting any younger, and that apartment of yours. I thought about the beachfront house I just bought in Malibu, the one I'd move into after tomorrow's announcement. The real estate agent had been shocked when I paid cash. But that's what you can do when you've been quietly building a billion-dollar company. I like my apartment, Mom, I said. It's close to work. Mike laughed. Work? You mean your little pet project? Come on, Sophie, it's time to grow up. Even my junior analysts make more than you probably do with your toy company. If he only knew. His entire bank's market cap was less than what Google had just paid for my toy company. Tomorrow, every financial news outlet would be running the story. Google acquires Pawprint AI in largest pet tech deal in history. But for now, I just smiled and asked Mom to pass the gravy. After dinner, as everyone moved to the living room for coffee, my phone buzzed. A text from David, my lead engineer. Everything's set for tomorrow. Google's press release is ready to go. You sure you don't want to tell your family tonight? I looked over at Mike, who was holding court about his latest luxury car purchase. Some surprises are worth waiting for, I texted back. My father caught me in the kitchen as I was helping Mom with dishes. You okay, sweetheart? Mike was pretty harsh tonight. I dried a plate, thinking about all the times Dad had encouraged my curiosity. Bought me electronics kits when I was little, defended my decision to study both computer science and finance in college. I'm fine, Dad, I said. Actually, you might want to watch the business news tomorrow morning. Could be interesting. He gave me a curious look but didn't press further. Dad had always been good at keeping secrets. As I drove home that night in my beat-up Honda, which I kept because it was the last gift Luna rode in before she passed, I thought about how everything would change tomorrow. The money didn't matter so much. I'd been effectively a billionaire on paper for months as the acquisition talks progressed. What mattered was finally being able to step out of the shadows, to show my family and the world what I built. My phone buzzed again. Another text, this time from Sarah Kim, my attorney. Final paperwork is complete. The merger Mike's working on just got flagged for regulatory review. Timing couldn't be better. I smiled, thinking about tomorrow's board meeting at Mike's bank. He'd be trying to explain why he missed the red flags in his merger targets books right around the time my face would be appearing on CNBC. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about proving people wrong. It's about proving yourself right. The morning of the announcement, I woke up early and made coffee in my modest apartment. The view of Silicon Valley from my balcony was particularly beautiful today, or maybe that was just my mood. My phone started buzzing at 6:30 a.m. First CNBC, then Bloomberg, then what felt like every financial journalist in the country. They'd all seen the press release. Google acquires Pawprint AI for $4.2 billion, marking largest pet tech acquisition in history. I declined the interviews for now. There would be time for that later. Instead, I turned on CNBC and waited. At 7:45 a.m., my face appeared on the screen alongside the acquisition headlines. Within minutes, my phone exploded with notifications. First was Mom, Sophie? Is this real? Call me. Then Dad. I knew it. So proud of you, sweetheart. Mike's name was notably absent from my notifications. I drove to Pawprint headquarters, where my team was gathering for the announcement. As I walked through the office, people were hugging, crying, celebrating. Many of them had taken equity instead of higher salaries when they joined. They were all millionaires now. Ms. Chen, my assistant Rachel, called out, "Your brother's bank is trying to reach you. Apparently, they're interested in investment opportunities." I smiled. Tell them to contact Google's corporate development team. We're a subsidiary now. The irony wasn't lost on me. 3 years ago, when I was trying to raise my first round of funding, I'd approached Mike's bank. He'd laughed me out of the building, telling me to come back when you have a real business plan. Now his bank was desperate for a piece of the action, but it was too late. The same day my acquisition was announced, news broke about the troubled merger Mike had been working on. The target company's books were worse than anyone had realized. His bank stock was in freefall. Around noon, my mother showed up at the office, tears in her eyes. "Why didn't you tell us?" she asked, hugging me tight. "All this time we thought." "You thought what, Mom?" "That I was failing. That Mike was right about me wasting my potential." She had the grace to look embarrassed. "We just worried about you, working all those hours, living so modestly when you could have had such a comfortable life in banking." I led her on a tour of the office, showing her the labs where we developed our AI technology, the walls covered in thank you letters from pet owners whose animals' lives had been saved by our early detection system. "I am comfortable, Mom," I said. "I've been comfortable for a while. I just didn't need to show it off." My phone buzzed. Mike was finally calling. I let it go to voicemail. Later that afternoon, I had my first official meeting with Google's executive team. They wanted to discuss expansion plans, integration strategies, and my role going forward. I'd be leading their new pet technology division with a significant budget and autonomy. As I left the Google campus, another voicemail from Mike. "Sophie, we need to talk. This merger situation. I could really use your help. Your exit is all anyone's talking about. Maybe you could put in a good word with some investors." I thought about all the family dinners where he belittled my work, all the times he dismissed my company as a cute hobby. Now he wanted my help. When I got home that evening, I found him waiting in my building's lobby. "How did you get in here?" I asked, though I knew the answer. He was still my emergency contact. Something had need to change. "Sophie, please," he said, following me to the elevator. "My career is on the line here. The merger's falling apart. Our stock is tanking, and you're suddenly the golden child of Silicon Valley. You have to help me." I turned to face him. "Have to? Like you had to mock my ridiculous gadget at dinner last night? Like you had to tell everyone I was wasting my life?" "I was wrong, okay," he snapped. "Is that what you want to hear? You're the brilliant one, the successful one. Now can we talk about how you're going to help your brother out of this mess?" We reached my floor, and I stepped out of the elevator. "No, Mike, we can't. Because this isn't about brilliance or success. It's about respect. You never respected me, my work, or my choices. You thought success only looked one way, your way. Now you're learning otherwise, and that's a lesson you need to experience fully." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying good luck with the merger, Mike. I hear Google's corporate development team gives excellent feedback on due diligence practices. You might want to look into that." I closed my apartment door on his protests, finally checking my other messages. The acquisition had made me the youngest self-made female billionaire in tech. Magazine covers were already being planned. Speaking requests were flooding in. But what made me happiest was an email from a pet owner in Ohio. "Your device caught my dog's heart condition 3 months before any symptoms showed. The vet says if we'd waited, it would have been too late. You saved his life. Thank you." I clicked over to my real estate agent's website, looking at the Malibu house I'd bought. The movers were coming next week. Maybe I'd invite the family over for dinner once I was settled. Show them what their failing daughter had really been up to all these years. But first, I had a company to run and lives to save. Success, I was learning, wasn't about proving others wrong. It was about staying true to your vision, even when nobody else could see it. 2 months after the Google acquisition, I sat in my new Malibu home, watching the sunset over the Pacific. The house was everything I dreamed of. Modern, spacious, with a dedicated room for Luna's old things and a wall of thank you letters from PopRent users. My phone buzzed, another text from Mike. "The merger's officially dead. Board meeting tomorrow to discuss leadership changes. Please, Sophie, I need your help." I set the phone down without responding. Mike's bank had lost billions on the failed merger, and heads were rolling. According to industry gossip, his position was particularly precarious. The doorbell rang. It was Mom and Dad coming for their first visit to my new home. "Oh, honey," Mom gasped as she walked in. This is incredible." Dad just smiled, walking straight to my wall of letters. "These are what matter, aren't they?" he said, reading the stories of pets saved by PopRent's early detection system. "They are," I agreed. "The money's nice, but this is why I built it." We sat on the terrace for dinner, prepared by the private chef I'd hired, one luxury I decided to allow myself. As we ate, I could see Mom struggling with something. Mike's in trouble, isn't he? She finally asked. His choices put him there, Mom. Not me. But you could help him. With your connections now. I set down my fork. Mom, do you remember last Christmas? When Mike spent the entire dinner telling everyone how I was throwing my life away. How I'd never amount to anything in real business. She nodded slowly. The whole time he was saying that, I was in final negotiations with Google. I was already worth billions on paper. But instead of telling him that, I sat there and took his abuse. Do you know why? Why? Dad asked quietly. Because I wanted to see who he really was. Not who he pretended to be when he needed something, but who he was when he thought I had nothing to offer him. The next morning, I drove to Mike's bank for the board meeting. Not to help him, but because Google was considering acquiring some of the bank's technology assets in the wake of the failed merger. As the new head of special projects, I'd be leading the evaluation. Mike was waiting in the lobby, looking like he hadn't slept in days. Sophie, thank God, he started, but I held up a hand. I'm here as a potential acquirer, Mike. Nothing more. Google is interested in your AI trading platform. We'll be evaluating it over the next few weeks. His face fell. But I'm your brother. Yes, you are. And for years, you used that relationship to tear me down. To make yourself feel bigger by making me feel smaller. Now that the tables have turned, you want to use that same relationship to save yourself. I said I was sorry. No, Mike, you said you were wrong. There's a difference. Sorry means understanding the harm you caused and wanting to make amends. Wrong just means the outcome didn't match your expectations. I walked past him to the elevator, remembering all the times he'd made me doubt myself, all the family dinners where he'd dismissed my dreams. The board meeting was brief. Mike's team presented their technology, trying desperately to impress Google's new pet tech division head. I asked pointed questions, exposed flaws in their system, and watched my brother squirm as I demonstrated a level of technical knowledge he never knew I possessed. Afterward, I found Dad waiting by my car. You didn't have to be so hard on him in there, he said. Yes, I did. Not for revenge, Dad. For his own good. Mike needs to learn that success isn't about putting others down or taking shortcuts. It's about building something real, something that helps people, or in my case, helps pets. Dad nodded slowly. You know, you remind me of your grandmother. She built her business from nothing, faced all kinds of discrimination, but never lost sight of why she was doing it. I smiled, thinking of Grandma Chen and her fierce determination. She'd been the first to invest in PopRent, writing me a check and saying, "Make something that matters." That evening, I sat in my home office, reviewing acquisition proposals for Google. Mike's bank's technology wasn't worth buying. Too many corners cut, too much emphasis on flash over substance. Just like Mike himself. My phone buzzed one last time. Mike again. I get it now. I really do. I'm sorry, Sophie. Not because I was wrong, but because I hurt you. Can we talk? Really talk? I stared at the message for a long time, thinking about family and forgiveness and what really matters in the end. Coffee tomorrow, I texted back. My office at Google. Let's start over. Because sometimes success isn't just about proving yourself right or others wrong. Sometimes it's about showing others a better way forward, even if they have to fall first to see it. As I looked out at the ocean, I thought about Luna, whose illness had inspired all of this. On my desk sat her old collar, now retrofitted with the latest version of PopRent's technology. It wouldn't bring her back, but it was saving thousands of other pets every day. That's what real success looks like. Not the house for the billions or the headlines, but the lives changed for the better. Even if some of those lives belong to people who once doubted you.